Burritos are a popular food for astronauts in space because it's easy to eat and doesn't produce crumbs that could float around and damage equipment. The company Hormel Foods, which makes canned spam, asks their employees to refer to spam emails as unwanted emails. Diana Budisevlevich, also known as the female Schindler, undertook one of the greatest humanitarian acts in World War II by saving over 7,700 children from concentration camps in the area of what is modern-day Croatia. The disease with the highest mortality rate that's not inherited is spongiform encephalopathies, aka prion diseases, which are transmissible brain diseases. The mortality rate is 100%. A 28-year-old kidnapping victim was jailed after he tried to extort his kidnappers. He told them, quote, "Call me if you want to finesse a trial. Either you cough up some bread or sit in the feds for 20 years. Your choice, my boy. IDGAF." You know what that means. Beavers' teeth are yellow in color because of the iron in their tooth enamel. Austria's coat of arms is the last to feature a hammer and sickle in Europe. NBA legend Paul Pierce was stabbed 11 times in 2000 and yet still played every single game of the 2000 to 2001 season. Kevin Hines once attempted to end his life by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, except he was rescued by a sea lion who nudged his body and kept him afloat until he was rescued by the Coast Guard. Miraculously, he survived and he is now a suicide prevention speaker. Bolaji Badejo played the xenomorph in the original Alien in 1979. At 6 foot 10 inches tall, the Nigerian visual artist's height and slender body convinced Ridley Scott that he was the perfect choice for the villain. Art Spiegelman, best known for the Pulitzer-winning graphical novel Mouse, also created the Garbage Pail Kids line of trading cards. There's an isolated extinct volcano crater in Papua New Guinea that's home to more than 40 unique species of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, including the world's smallest parrot. Healthy guinea pigs excrete at least 50 fecal pellets a day. Imagine pooping 50 times a day. Turkeys actually blush when they're excited. That's it, that's the fact. It would have taken 125 years for the concrete that made up the Hoover Dam to cool if it was poured as one continuous pour. Instead, giant concrete blocks and columns were poured and then cooled by a series of internally contained pipes of cold water, greatly reducing cooling time. Production on the 80s TV series Elf was so stressful that Max Wright, who played the father Will Tanner, once physically attacked Elf. Producers had to jump in and pull Wright off of Elf. The famous Aerosmith song Walk This Way was inspired by the Walk This Way joke from the movie Young Frankenstein. Jules Brunette was the historic figure who inspired the film The Last Samurai. In 1868, this decorated captain, who was also a painter, decided to unofficially stay in Japan and fight with the Shogun forces against the Meiji Empire. Anterograde amnesia is a condition where the sufferer completely forgets very recent events, yet can learn and retain new skills. This, even though they forget every day that they had learned those skills yesterday. The Fast and the Furious movie series is called Wild Speed in Japan. Some of the titles also include spoilers for major plot points as well. A South Korean doctor named Hwang Woo-suk was a scientist who cloned a dog in 2005 named Snuppy, an Afghan hound. He also tried human cloning, but with no success. Blackjack Pizza was founded in 1983 by a former Domino's employee named Vince Shemuel, who wanted to give Colorado an alternative to his former employer. He named the pizza restaurant after the blackjack game to indicate that it was fast food and because blackjack and dominoes are both games. Groundhogs and woodchucks are the same thing. There's no difference between the two, and in fact, the term woodchuck and groundhog are interchangeable. Despite the popular belief, it's actually the opposite. A frog that is gradually heated in water will jump out, while a frog placed into already boiling water will die immediately and not jump out. Tina Turner had her US citizenship relinquished back in 2013 and lived in Switzerland for almost 30 years until her recent death. The number of priests in the US have been down 60% in the last 50 years, leaving over 3,500 churches without one. In 2001, an artist covered a house in Powell, Wyoming with 10,000 pounds of government-issued pepper jack cheese. The town was so excited about the cheese house that they even threw a parade and crowned a cheese king and queen. Wow, how cheesy. Paper airplanes were invented way before the word airplane even existed. In fact, kids and adults of all ages have been folding and flying paper airplanes for more than 150 years. Approximately 13% of finishers of the Boston Marathon get hyponatremia caused by overconsumption of fluids, which is when the concentration of sodium in your blood is abnormally low. When a star like our sun dies, it doesn't explode into a supernova or collapse into a black hole. Instead, it gently sheds its outer layers, which form a beautiful cloud called a planetary nebula, while the dying star's core becomes a white dwarf. Despite being organisms with highly intricate nervous systems and an impressive level of intelligence, many octopus species only live roughly 1 to 5 years. Asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral which has to be mined, and millions of tons of it are still being mined today. The 2008 financial crisis led to a significant shortage of coins in the United States. The crisis caused many people to hoard their spare change, which reduced the amount of coins in circulation. As a result, the Federal Reserve had to increase its production of coins in order to meet the demand. To enhance the pleasures of sacred liquors, the Mayans used to ingest them in a way that many would consider unconventional, including through means of enema. That means they put it in their butt. The British Post Office falsely prosecuted over 700 postmasters for fraud and theft due to a faulty computer system. The cases constitute the most widespread miscarriage of justice in British legal history, spanning a period of over 20 years. In the 1800s in New York City, pigs roamed freely and ate trash in the streets. When the city government attempted to ban them in 1821, pig owners refused and rioted, causing the government to suspend their efforts. Over the next 28 years, owners continued to riot anytime the city tried to ban pigs. Because trademarks became so generic, which means companies can lose rights to the mark, transformers no longer transform in packaging and some marketing. They're listed as converting instead. Inostransavia were mammal-like reptiles which lived before dinosaurs, and some of the mammal-like reptiles evolved into modern mammals. The Club de Bruti, also known as the World Association of Ugly People, based in the Italian town of Piobico, which has 30,000 members worldwide and fights to recognize ugly people's worth, is a society that values one's looks. That's the one that your mom's a part of. Boom, roasted. Gabe Saunier was a man who started off as a janitor in a Louisiana elementary school one day in 1985, when he was inspired by the then principal to take up teaching. Gabe was 39 years old when he started studying for a teaching degree. He's now the principal of the elementary school. The brown snake eagle is a bird specifically adapted to target a variety of venomous snakes, such as the puff adder, and has even been known to prey upon fully grown black mambas. In a study conducted by Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, it was found that more than 17 million adults in the US had an alcohol use disorder, and that the top 5 occupations in alcohol abuse are miners, construction workers, food service workers, lawyers, and doctors. Pennsylvania allows vertical-oriented license plates for motorcycles, with numbers being read top down rather than left to right. On the 6th of June in 2011, an unnamed woman and man in Gatineau, Canada were killed when a 200-kilogram flying bear crashed through their windshield before passing through the rear window. The 200-kilogram or 440-pound black bear was sent airborne by a car in front of the SUV after it had stepped into a path of traffic on Highway 148. There's an international treaty preventing the use of environmental modification techniques or weather warfare. In order to obtain silk from the silkworm, it's boiled or gassed inside their cocoons. 6,600 cocoons equaling 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of silk are created from this. Archduke Franz Ferdinand killed almost 300,000 animals. Ferdinand was an avid hunter and tallied his kills in a massive journal. Hello, PETA! Ricard Oste developed oat milk while studying lactose intolerance at Lund University in Sweden. Limp Bizkit was meant to be a terrible name so that people would look at their album, see the name, and then go, oh, this name sucks. Limp Bizkit making fun of themselves has been a recurring theme throughout the band's entire career. Tupac and Michael Jackson almost collaborated on a song, but it fell through when Jackson failed to show up for a studio session. Now that would have been freaking epic. In Japan, 80,000 people go missing every year. In fact, there's an entire industry specializing in evaporated persons, where companies specialize in making people, including some rich people, people disappear overnight. The Canadian government has a free flag program where they will send you a free Canadian flag by simply filling out a form online. However, the current waiting list is over a century long, so don't expect it anytime soon. If a fighter pilot ejects using a Martin Baker ejection seat, the company provides a tie, patch, certificate, tie pin, and membership card for the Ejection Tie Club, plus a subsidized limited edition Brentman watch. The choir in the title sequence of the old show Mr. Bean is actually singing Esse Homo que est Faba, which translates to Behold the Man Who is a Bean in Latin. Jumbo jets such as Boeing 747s burn approximately 10 to 11 tons of fuel an hour, which equates to roughly 1 gallon or 4 liters of fuel every second. The founders of Outback Steakhouse intentionally decided not to visit Australia while developing the Outback concept, as they were concerned that having too much authenticity would actually confuse customers. Milita Benz was a German woman and entrepreneur who created the coffee filter from paper from her son's school notebook. In Zimbabwe, it's still illegal to insult the president, and offenders face up to a year in prison or a fine of 4,800 Zimbabwe dollars, which is about $13 US. Veins only appear blue because of the way that wavelengths of light hit the skin. During the first dive to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, one of the outer window panes on the bathysphere cracked. They opted to continue and actually successfully reached the bottom. The technical definition of point-blank range can include targets as far as 250 yards away. The world's oldest terrarium or sealed bottle ecosystem has been thriving since 1960. The 10-gallon bottle is kind of like a mini Earth. It's only been opened once in 53 years to add a little bit more water to it in 1972. Otherwise, it has been sealed without fresh water or air. McDonald's closed in Iceland, but the last burger and fries still linger on and are actually in a glass-encased shrine in a guest house in South Iceland. 12 plus years later, neither appear to have decayed a single bit. Women can actually give birth to twins with different biological fathers, a rare occurrence called heteropaternal superfecundation. The frequency of this has not been established, but one study found that it occurred in around 1 in every 42 cases of fraternal twins whose parents were involved in paternity disputes. Titanic Thompson was a prolific hustler and golfer of the early 20th century. One of Thompson's tricks was to play right-handed, win, and offer to play double or nothing left-handed, but he was naturally left-handed. In his time as a professional golfer, he could earn $30,000 a year, and he earned that in a week. The term brain freeze is actually a registered trademark of 7-Eleven. Fatso the Fat-Arsed Wombat was an unofficial mascot of the 2000 Summer Olympics. He proved so popular that the Australian Olympic Committee actually attempted to ban athletes from appearing with Fatso to stop him upstaging their official mascots. Some Jeeps have Easter eggs of designs of animals and other symbols that are hidden around the vehicle. Some of them are found on the windshield or carved into the dashboard, under the seats, and near the gas cap. According to the US Census Bureau, US residents speak more than 350 languages. All sperm whales in the world descended from just one female who lived tens of thousands of years ago. That discovery comes from an examination of the mitochondrial DNA of more than 1,600 sperm whales from all over the world. Fittingly, researchers have named her Eve. Through the lens of modern data analytics, a simple voice recording can yield thousands of speech parameters that can reveal a user's biometric identity, body shape, personality traits, mental and physical health, emotions, drug habits, geographical origin, and socioeconomic status. The diabolical ironclad beetle has one of the strongest exoskeletons of any insect, allowing it to withstand forces of up to 39,000 times its body weight. Chaser was a famous border collie who lived between 2004 and 2019 in Spartanburg, South Carolina. The dog's tested memory was the highest of any non-human animal. She could identify and retrieve over 1,022 different toys based on name and category. Filmmaker James Cameron has visited the Titanic 33 times, including once when when he was trapped for 16 hours due to onboard technical issues. As of 2017, the US Navy has started using Xbox 360 controllers to operate the periscopes on submarines based on feedback from junior officers and sailors. Previous controls for the periscope were clunky and really heavy, and not only that, but they cost $38,000 compared to an Xbox 360 controller, which costs around $20. The line "there's one for you, 19 for me" in the Beatles song Taxman was not an exaggeration. At the time, the highest UK tax rate was 95%. Lucille Ball convinced Merv Griffin to hire Alex Trebek to host the revival of Jeopardy in 1984 when the original host, Art Fleming, a friend of Trebek's, declined to return. Trebek holds the Guinness World Record for most episodes of a game show hosted, hosting the show until his death in 2020. Chinese checkers is actually called Sternhalma and is not related to Chinese culture or the game of checkers, and was actually invented in Germany in 1892. In 1997, a mentally unstable man in Canada cut down a rare golden spruce tree, sacred to the indigenous people of the area, in order to protest the logging industry. His trial was on the island in British Columbia where he cut down the tree, but fearing for his safety, he opted to kayak there solo rather than taking a plane. He hasn't been seen since. The Titanic was the place of discovery for tiny iron-eating microbes. These microbes form icicle-shaped rusticles which consist of 35% iron compounds and a community of symbiotic microbes and fungi. This bacterium, known as Halomonas titanicae, is expected to dissolve the Titanic by 2045. Gabe Newell, president of the video game company Valve, which created Steam, owns Inkfish, an ocean exploration research organization which currently holds the records for the deepest crewed dives in all 5 oceans. They did this with their deep submergence vehicle called the Limiting Factor. In 1978, the Beatles record company Apple sued newly founded Apple Inc. for trademark infringement and won. Part of the agreement was for Apple Inc. to never enter the music business. When they created iTunes, a new lawsuit began, but the Beatles lost this time in 2006. Tyler Perry provided security and housing for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle when they moved to California. They named him their daughter's godfather. The largest church in the world is the Basilica of Our Lady Peace in Yamoussoukro, the administrative capital of the Ivory Coast. It can accommodate up to 18,000 worshippers, but ordinary liturgies conducted at the basilica are usually attended by only a few hundred people. Hershey's ice cream is unrelated to Hershey's the candy company, even though both companies were founded in the same year in 1894 in Lancaster County, PA. Andy Buckley, who played David Wallace on The Office, is actually a former financial analyst in real life and was chosen for the role specifically due to his familiarity with the intricacies of corporate finance and continued to work in the field during his time on the show. Louis Vuitton once released a range of fitness gear, including a $2,650 pair of dumbbells, a $650 skipping rope, a $2,650 volleyball, and a $2,210 ping pong set. Duck feet have fewer nerves and smaller blood vessels, so they don't feel cold as drastically. This is an evolutionary trait to prevent them from getting frostbite in the winter. The leading hypothesis for why zebras have stripes is because it helps prevent horseflies from biting them. Stripes actually interfere with the optic flow patterns needed by flying insects in order to execute controlled landings. The first living thing to survive a cockpit seat ejection at supersonic speed was a bear. It was ejected during test flights and survived. Paris has more than 44,000 restaurants. With an approximate population of 2.14 million residents, that's almost 48 people for every restaurant. Our stomach produces about 3 to 4 liters, or almost a gallon, of gastric juice every day. The cover of the Doors' 1970 album Morrison Hotel was actually taken at a Morrison Hotel in LA. The band was not given permission to photograph, so they did it while the clerk was away and jumped behind the desk. Studies have shown more creative people report greater trauma in their childhood. Sharks' skin is basically covered entirely with teeth. They're coated with what's called denticles, which are much closer to teeth than fish scales. There's a species of wasp called the horse guard wasp. It's found in the eastern US and acts as a natural biological control by hanging around horses and killing horseflies. Despite their loud buzzing noises, horses really aren't disturbed by them. Ida and Isidore Strauss were a couple aboard the Titanic the night that it sank. Isidore had a chance to join his wife on a lifeboat, but stayed behind to give his place away to a child. Ida, refusing to leave her husband behind, too left the boat. They died together arm in arm when the ship sank. Argentine composer Lalo Schifrin wrote the Mission Impossible theme for the 1960s TV series, where the main rhythm is based on Morse code for the letters M and I in a 5/4 time signature. The paradise tree snake can glide hundreds of feet through the air with speeds of up to 25 miles per hour or 40 kilometers per hour. Octopuses have 9 brains, one mini brain in each arm and another in the center of their bodies. Each arm can actually independently taste, touch, and perform basic movements, but all arms can work together when prompted by the central brain. Charles Manson was a declared Scientologist when he was in prison and even ordered a member of his cult to work at an organization in the United Kingdom. Manson, however, eventually left Scientology because he thought it was too crazy. Free-ranging street dogs in cities all around the world have learned how to navigate through traffic, wait to use crosswalks during a red light, and ride public transportation. When electricity was introduced to the White House in 1891, President Benjamin Harrison and his wife refused to touch any of the light switches because they were afraid of being electrocuted. They ended up having employees at the White House follow them around and turn the switches on and off for them when they entered or left a room. Chicken wings actually used to be throwaway parts of the chicken in restaurant kitchens right up until 1964, when Teresa Bellissimo invented the buffalo wing at her restaurant in Anchor Bar in Buffalo, New York. Wings are now the most popular and expensive part of the chicken in the United States. The co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous is Bill Wilson, and he believed that using LSD could cure alcoholism based on his own experiences with the drug. He wanted to incorporate the drug into the program, but the other leading members refused. When sharks are flipped upside down, they fall into a trance-like state called tonic immobility. Orcas have figured this out and have been seen in the wild turning great whites over and killing them. It became one of the few instances of something else preying on great white sharks instead of humans. There's a giant grizzly bear in Banff, Canada known as the Boss. He's eaten 2 black bears, walks through the town in the middle of the day, and has fathered many of the bears that live in Banff, Yolo, and Kootenai National Parks. Spearfish, South Dakota broke the world record for the fastest temperature change on January 22nd, 1943. The temperature rose from -20 degrees Celsius to 7 degrees Celsius in the span of 2 minutes when the Chinook winds passed through. After the wind passed, the temperature dropped back down to -20 degrees Celsius in just 27 minutes, which caused glass windows to crack. The term freelancer refers to the medieval warriors who were not under the oath of any lord, making them a free lance. It took author J.R.R. Tolkien 18 years to write and publish Lord of the Rings in 1955, after he started working on the books in 1937. According to the advisory company CEB Tower Group, about $1 billion worth of gift cards go unused every year. Camels now live in Australia as an invasive species, but some Aboriginal recall seeing them in earlier times. The Circus Maximus was the first and largest stadium ever built in ancient Rome, accommodating 150,000 people. In the 6th century, the massive stadium was decayed and quarried off for materials. It's now a park in Rome. When author Mark Twain was 70 years old in 1905, he began to collect young girls from the ages of 10 to 16 for a club which he called his angelfish. 1% of static on your television comes from the light of the Big Bang. Singer Eartha Kitt, known for the song Santa Baby, also played the voice of the character Yzma in the 2000 Disney animated film The Emperor's New Groove. The oldest selfie photograph dates all the way back to 1839. Roadrunners are so adapted to their dry environment that they do not need to drink water. They get all of their moisture from their food. They're also known to kill and eat rattlesnakes. A large majority of the world now uses the Gregorian calendar, with the exception of 3 countries: Ethiopia, Iran, and Afghanistan. When the ill-fated Donner Party set out from Springfield, Illinois in 1846, a young lawyer named Abraham Lincoln Lincoln considered joining the group on their journey. He ultimately decided to not go because he had a toddler at home and his wife Mary Todd was pregnant. Wilt Chamberlain averaged a mind-boggling 50.4 points per game for the Philadelphia Warriors during the 1961 to 1962 NBA season. He also scored 100 points in a game during the same season on March 2nd, 1962. George Washington's dentures were not made out of wood. They were actually made out of human, horse, and cow teeth. In addition, they were made of ivory, lead, tin, alloy, copper alloy, and silver alloy. The Guinness World Record for longest career with one company belongs to Walter Orthman from Brazil. He started working for Industrious Renault SA in 1938 and continues to work for the company, now called Renault View, as of April 2nd, 2018. There's a fruit from Asia called the durian that smells so bad that Singapore banned them on their rapid mass transit systems. Food writer Richard Sterling has written that the odor is best described as turpentine and onions garnished with a gym sock. Hippopotamuses are known as one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. They kill about 500 people a year in Africa and are capable of running the same speed as humans on land. Their jaws are so strong that they could snap a canoe in half. Sears published and distributed tombstone and monument catalogs in the early 20th century for Americans. Australian jewel beetles have been documented attempting to mate with empty beer bottles instead of females because of the bottle's brown color. Believe it or not, this has led to a reduced survival rate for them. Because of varying hormone levels, 40% of pregnant women develop gingivitis at some point during their pregnancy. This condition is called pregnancy gingivitis. Comic Sans, which is known as one of the worst and most unprofessional fonts, or more properly stated, typeface, is commonly used by and for people with dyslexia. They're able to focus on the individual parts of the words because of the irregular shapes in the letters. There are about 2,000 native Greek speakers in Italy today who derived from the ancient Greek colonization on the Italian peninsula. The name of the bar in the opening fight scene of the 1984 film Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is called Club Obi-Wan. This, of course, is based off the character Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars films. Also directed by George Lucas. Get it? Yes, makes sense. A computer at MIT in 1973 predicted that the end of our society would happen by the year 2040 because of either overpopulation, pollution levels, or lack of natural resources on Earth. The first motel opened on December 12, 1925 in San Luis Obispo, California, and was called the Milestone Inn. The purpose of the motel was to lodge automobile travelers, which is why they're called motels. The I in Apple products such as iPod, iPad, and iMac stands for Internet. Steve Jobs explained this when he first introduced the iMac in 1998. The bluefin tuna was considered a trash fish until the 1970s and was either put in cat food or hauled off to the dumps. The fish had such a bad reputation with the Japanese that they called it Nikko Matagi, which means food too low for even a cat to eat. Roland the Farter was a 12th century entertainer for King Henry II of England. Every Christmas, he would perform a dance for the king that always ended with a jump, a fart, and a whistle simultaneously. And for these annual performances, he was given a manor house and over 100 acres of land. Javelins are allowed on Delta Airlines as long as the trip is not to and from Amsterdam in the Netherlands or Dublin, Ireland. Hopeful contestants are not allowed to compete on Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy if they've already competed on any other national game show. If all of the gold that was ever mined was gathered and melted down together, it would be enough to fill about 3.5 Olympic-sized pools. A cat's nose prints are just as unique as a human's fingerprints and can be used to identify lost cats whose microchips have become useless. Also, a cat's sense of smell is 14 times more sensitive than ours. Actor Idris Elba used to be a drug dealer and would sell marijuana while he was a bouncer at the popular club Caroline's. Celebrities who frequented the nightclub, such as D.L. Hughley and Dave Chappelle, simply knew him as the doorman. Between 1860 and 1916, every soldier in the British Army was required to have a mustache. If they shaved it, they would be disciplined or even imprisoned. Facial hair has its benefits in battle by protecting the soldier's face from the cold elements. According to a RAND study in 2017, 60% of American adults now have at least one chronic condition, and 42% have more than one. This accumulates to hundreds of billions of dollars spent on healthcare every year. The United States Department of Defense employs 2.86 million people from military, National Guard, and civilian backgrounds as of 2018. The annual budget for the Department of Defense is $7.17 billion US. Sound designer Ben Burtt created the unique sound for the TIE Fighter from the Star Wars films by combining the sound of an elephant call with a car driving on wet pavement. According to the book The Sounds of Star Wars, the sound of the engine was supposed to be similar to the German Junker bombers that would use sirens to scare civilians during raids. Reindeer and caribou are the same species, but they actually have differences between them. Caribou are larger and usually are found in North America and Greenland, while reindeer are smaller and can be found in Europe and Asia. Semantic satiation is the psychological act of repeating a word or phrase over and over again until it loses its meaning to the listener. Michael Dillon is the only IRS revenue officer to ever be killed in the line of duty. In 1983, he tried to collect a sum of $500 from a former service employee on behalf of the IRS, but was shot 3 times by him by an M1 rifle and was killed instantly. In Icelandic folklore, there's a vicious creature called the Yule Cat that hunts and eats people who did not receive any garments or clothes to wear for Christmas. The largest known prime number ever discovered has 23.2 million digits. There are also prizes offered by the Electric Frontier Foundation for anyone who finds record primes. Participants are capable of winning over $50,000. Since 1968, Snoopy from the comic Peanuts has been the official safety mascot for NASA. Every mission since has traveled with a silver Snoopy on board, and once back on Earth is given as an award to a civilian who worked to keep the astronauts safe. Antoine Augustin Parmentier was responsible for the popularization of potatoes in France during the late 1700s. He would line guards around his potato patch during the day to hint that he was hiding valuables, then at night leave the patch unattended so people could steal his potatoes and enjoy them. He also came up with recipes featuring potatoes, founded a school of bread making, and studied methods of food refrigeration. The countries that have "stan" in them, such as Afghanistan and Pakistan, end that way because the suffix "stan" is an ancient Persian word that means land, nation, or place of. The Spix macaw, which is the bluebird featured in the animated film Rio, is now officially extinct in the wild. Deforestation is the leading cause of their extinction. The animation studio Topcraft, which is known for the 1977 animated film The Hobbit, ended up splitting into 2 studios. One went on to create the television show Thundercats, and the other became Studio Ghibli. Beekeepers are strongly advised not to eat bananas before interacting with bees because the fruit contains a compound that triggers their alarm pheromone. If the bees notice this on their beekeeper's breath, they will become extremely aggressive. Honeybees will usually sleep between 5 and 8 hours a day, and some will hold each other's legs as they sleep. So they like to sleep a lot and cuddle. So they're me. For the 1983 film Cujo, anywhere from 5 to 13 dogs were used for filming, and all of their tails had to be tied down with fishing wire because they were wagging from excitement the entire time. According to research published in Animal Cognition, rats may have empathy. During one experiment, rats were given a choice of a chocolate treat or saving one of their own from drowning, and they would choose to save their drowning companion. Anywhere from 40,000 to 45,000 PhDs are given out every year in the United States. However, over 50,000 fake PhDs are given out every year by diploma mills. This means that over half of all the people who claim to have a PhD have a fake one. Birds are insensitive to the compound capsaicin, which is what makes chili peppers hot. In fact, if rodents are always eating the bird food that you put out, you can make it spicy and it will deter them from eating it. A study done by Durham University showed that some well-known fairy tales are much older than we previously previously thought. Beauty and the Beast can be traced back to Indo-European lineages between 2,500 and 6,000 years ago. Jack and the Beanstalk, also known as the boy who stole the ogre's treasure, can be traced back more than 5,000 years ago. Before he died, Ivan the Terrible never told anyone about a secret library that he inherited from his father, and it is still being searched for today. The library is said to contain rare Greek, Latin, Chinese, and Egyptian works. Opossums love to eat ticks and will virtually get rid of all of them in your yard. In a single season, one is capable of eating 5,000 ticks. NASCAR pit crew members used to be mechanics that underwent physical training. However, today there are more athletes who train to be mechanics because of how physically demanding the job is. Actor Cary Grant took LSD an estimated 100 times from the years 1958 until 1961 in order to search for inner peace and meaning. He said that the result of these sessions was a rebirth and that he finally got where he wanted to go. The lowest attendance ever for a Major League Baseball game occurred on April 29, 2015 between the Baltimore Orioles and the Chicago White Sox. There was an insufficient amount of security for the game because of the civil unrest in Baltimore following the death of Freddie Gray. Because of this, no one was allowed at the game, and it was the first crowdless game ever. The Orioles ended up defeating the White Sox 8-2. According to research from the University of Cambridge, children get more satisfaction from the relationship with their pets than their own brothers and sisters. They also get along better with their pets than their siblings. Not a big surprise there. The walkie-talkie skyscraper in London had to be fitted with a sunshade because the reflection from the sun on one of its sides became so hot that it was melting cars and even caused a fire in a barbershop on the street. The word quarantine comes from the Italian word quarantino, which means 40. During the Black Death in the 14th century, ships had to wait for 40 days outside of the port to prove that they weren't infected. Director George Lucas introduced the concept of the hit film Raiders of the Lost Ark to his friend Steven Spielberg when they were building a sandcastle at the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel in Hawaii. Comedian Steve Martin has won more awards from playing the banjo and bluegrass music than he has from comedy. Musician Bob Dylan has been on tour since June 7th, 1988 and calls it the never-ending tour. He played his 2000th show on October 16th, 2007 in Dayton, Ohio, and his 3000th show on April 19th, 2019 in Austria. In 2015, Godzilla became a Japanese citizen and was even employed as a tourism ambassador of Japan. A common shrew must eat up twice their body weight in food every day to stay alive. They will actually starve to death if they go without food for only a few hours. US President Thomas Jefferson would breed a special type of geese in order to produce his quill pens. Because he was right-handed, he would only use 5 feathers at the tip of the left wing. Left-handed people would use the 5 feathers at the tip of the right wing. Then he would bury the feathers in hot, dry sand to harden them and cut them down to a point. Actor Viggo Mortensen from the Lord of the Rings trilogy is fluent in Danish, English, French, and Spanish. He's also conversational in Italian, understands Norwegian and Swedish, and even has some knowledge of Catalan. During the New York draft riots of 1863, Leonard Jerome, who was the grandfather of Winston Churchill, defended the New York Times office building with a Gatling gun. For the 1978 film Superman, Marlon Brando was paid $3.7 million and given 11.75% of the profits to play Superman's father, Jor-El. He only worked for 13 days and was given less than 20 minutes of screen time. For comparison, Christopher Reeve was paid $250,000 to play the role of Superman. Between 2011 and 2013, China used more cement than what the United States used throughout the entire 20th century. The Palace of the Parliament in Romania is the heaviest building in the world, weighing around 4,098,500,000 kilograms. The cost of heating and electric use also costs more than $6 million a year, which is the cost of powering a medium-sized city. If your dishwasher is 10 years or older, it probably has a self-cleaning filter. However, if it's a newer model, you most likely have to manually clean the filter regularly. That's just a little fun fact for y'all. dirty dish people. Sir Isaac Newton used a large sewing needle to poke behind his eyeball in an attempt to fix his vision. He deemed the experiment a success and even wrote about it in detail in his journal, complete with how to perform the procedure. No thanks, I'd rather just not see. Serial killer Ed Kemper, who was depicted in the Netflix show Mindhunter, used his time in prison to record hundreds of books to audio for the blind. You can actually listen to him read an excerpt from the book Flowers in the Attic, which involves incest and family abuse. No thanks, I'll just stick to my regular audiobooks. According to data from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, there's about a 40% chance that someone will get away with murder in the US. There's also about a 50% chance that someone will get away with assaulting someone. While Catherine Bach was playing Daisy Duke in the show The Dukes of Hazzard, her legs were insured for $1 million. The ancient Romans would recycle their urine by peeing into pots and leaving them on the street. Someone would come by to pick them up so they could be turned into ammonia, which they could use for different purposes, such as bleach and even mouthwash. Universal Pictures didn't include a copyright symbol for the 1963 film Charades starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. Because of this, the film entered public domain upon its release in theaters. The Central Intelligence Agency developed a heart attack gun that shoots a small dart and is capable of penetrating through clothing. The dart then disintegrates on contact, and all that's left is a small red dot on the skin before the poison seeps into the bloodstream. An autopsy also would show that the victim simply died of a heart attack and nothing more. According to the Journal of Forensic Sciences, researchers discovered a deer feeding on a human being for the first time. They may have been eating it because of a deficiency in minerals such as phosphorus, salt, and calcium. Yikes. The mayor of Philadelphia had to issue a statement that it's illegal to fill a dumpster with water and use it as a pool after people would tap fire hydrants and fill them up during the summer months. Let me tell you something, it has never been so hot that I've ever thought of filling a trash with it. Okay, it's gross. Aluminum that was recovered from the debris of the World Trade Center after September 11th was used as cable shields for NASA's Mars exploration rover's Spirit and Opportunity. The purpose of this was to honor the victims of that fateful day. The unfrosted Pop-Tarts flavors strawberry, blueberry, and brown sugar cinnamon are considered vegan, but frosted Pop-Tarts are not because they contain dairy. Pop-Tarts also had their own cereal in the early 1990s called Pop-Tart Crunch. I do think I remember that. It was delicious. The term lunatic comes from the Latin word lunaticus, which referred to madness and epilepsy because mental illnesses were believed to be caused by the position of the moon. Aristotle and Pliny the Elder claimed that a full moon would trigger insane people with bipolar disorder. Until around 1700, it was believed that the moon was one of the causes of fevers, rheumatism, and other diseases. Director John McTiernan, who directed films such as Die Hard, Predator, and The Hunt for Red October, was sentenced to 10 months in federal prison camp in Yankton, South Dakota for lying to the FBI. Actor Sir Anthony Hopkins has been sober ever since December 29, 1975, after he woke up in Arizona with no idea how he got there. He also didn't know he was autistic until he was diagnosed with the syndrome well into his 70s. According to the Visual Cliff study done by Eleanor J. Gibson and Richard D. Walk, humans are born with only two innate fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. The study was performed on infants in simulated settings. Cats, meow, enjoy laying in the sunlight while they nap because it helps them save energy and expend fewer calories to maintain their internal body heat. They also run at a hotter body temperature than we do at around 102 degrees. Before he became the famous writer known as Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens was a steamboat pilot on the Mississippi River until the Civil War broke out in 1861. He thought of the name Mark Twain because it's a nautical reference that means 2 fathoms deep. The largest tuna fish ever recorded was measured at 6.4 meters and weighed a whopping 725.75 kilograms. They're also extremely fast swimmers despite their large size, and they can reach speeds up to 99.7 kilometers per hour. McDonald's has been taking advantage of their used cooking oil in the UK. decay. Since 2007, they've been using the leftover oil as fuel for more than half of their fleet of delivery trucks. If you've ever wanted to know the difference between jam, jelly, preserves, and marmalade, well, here it is. Jam is a thick mixture of fruit, pectin, and sugar that's boiled rapidly until the fruit is soft but thick enough to spread easily. Jelly's different in that it's made from sugar, pectin, acid, and fruit juice that turns into a clear spread. Marmalade is a spread made from the peel and pulp of citrus fruit, which is cooked for a long time. And finally, preserves are chunks of fruit that's surrounded by jelly. Dr. Pepper was marketed as a warm holiday beverage in the 1960s. The idea was to heat it up in a saucepan until it lost all of its carbonation, and then pour the warm and sweet beverage over a lemon. During season 2 of the hit show I Love Lucy, Lucille Ball found out that she was pregnant. CBS agreed to write her pregnancy into the show, but the network demanded that the word pregnant was never to be used because it was considered too vulgar. Instead, they used the word expecting. Even though Steve Irwin loved every animal on Earth, there was one in particular that he thought didn't like him very much. During an interview with Scientific American magazine, he said, "For some reason, parrots have to bite me. That's their job. I don't know what it is." He also claimed that one almost ripped his nose off. China is responsible for producing 58% of the peaches in the world. Out of a worldwide production of 25 million metric tons, that's about 14.4 million metric tons. The CIP is the International Potato Center, which is located in Lima, Peru. They proved that it was possible to grow potatoes on Mars by simulating a Martian environment here on Earth. There's a superhero in the X-Men universe named Forget-Me-Not, whose superpower is that he's incapable of being remembered by anyone. Professor Charles Xavier actually had to set a psychic reminder in his head once an hour to remember that Forget-Me-Not even existed. The longest marriage ever recorded was 86 years by a North Carolina couple named Zelmira and Herbert Fisher. They got married on May 13, 1924, and stayed together until Herbert passed away in 2011 at 105 years old. Around 2 billion people on the Earth eat insects as part of their everyday diet. They're packed with protein along with being inexpensive. The only region where they're not considered part of a diet is in the West. Heisler Beer, or Heisler Gold Ale, is a prop beer made by independent studio services that's used in numerous movies and television shows. It's appeared on Beer Fest, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Parks and Recreation. Go back and look for it, you'll find it. A blacksmith is someone who works with iron and steel, while a whitesmith works with white metal such as tin and pewter. There's also a brownsmith who works with brass and copper. The famous artist Leonardo da Vinci never had a last name because he was born out of wedlock. The Da Vinci part of his name came to be because he was born in the town Vinci, so his name means Leonardo of Vinci. In 1948, a local prankster in Florida named Tony Signorini would put on a pair of 13.6 kilogram three-toed shoes and walk along the beaches at night to create giant footprints in the sand. Locals began to believe that a 4.5 meter tall penguin was roaming the beaches until the mystery was solved in 1988. Whenever actor Kevin Bacon is invited to a wedding, he always bribes the DJ not to play the song Footloose. He does this because he does not wish to upstage the bride and groom on their big day. The world's largest book suddenly disappeared during some time in 1936 in Cleveland, Ohio. Titled The Golden Book of Cleveland, it was 2.1 meters by 1.5 meters by 1 meter thick and weighed 2,267 kilograms. To put that into perspective, that's about the same size as a queen-size bed. Almost every casino is designed in a way to avoid people from turning at a 90-degree angle when they walk. According to the book Addiction by Design, Machine Gambling in Las Vegas by Natasha Dow Schull, making these sharp turns forces people to activate the decision-making part of their brains. Casinos want you to curve gently when you walk through them. According to a recent study by the University of Kansas, it takes 50 hours of socializing to go from an acquaintance to a casual friend. It takes another 40 hours to become a real friend, and a total of 200 hours to become a close friend. Fashion designer Coco Chanel was a spy for the Nazi Party and was an advocate during the Third Reich during World War II. She believed that Jewish people were a threat to the entirety of Europe. According to a study at the University of California, Davis, adding a small amount of seaweed to a cow's diet reduces their methane production by almost 60%. This discovery could lessen the amount of greenhouse gases that our bovine friends emit. People with anxiety, depression, or insomnia have reported that they get a better night's sleep when they sleep under a weighted blanket. These blankets are filled with plastic pellets and add weight and cost anywhere from $120 to more than $250. Singer Rihanna has her own holiday in her home country of Barbados. Since 2008, February 22nd has been Rihanna Day, and Prime Minister David Thompson announced it at an awards ceremony. Almost every mammal on Earth has the same number of vertebrae in its neck, which is 7. The only ones who do not have exactly 7 vertebrae are sloths and manatees. But they wouldn't know, because sloths are slow. On January 19th, 1977, it snowed in South Florida for the first time in recorded history. Retired meteorologist Jim Lusheen somehow thought that cocaine was falling from the sky after perhaps a bad drug drop had gone bad. June 11th is Corn on the Cob Day. Every ear of corn has an even number row of kernels, and there are 800 kernels on an average ear. Many foods in nature consist of an even number of rows and lines. For example, watermelons have an even number of stripes on them. A coconut can be classified as either a fruit, a nut, or a seed. Every part of a coconut can be used as they produce food, fiber, drink, utensils, fuel, and instruments. This is why many consider them to be the tree of life. In 1987, there were only 27 California condors left in the world. They were all captured for captive breeding, and now there are 488 of them as of 2018. The first ever in-flight radio transmission came in 1910 when Walter Wellman, 5 of his companions, and his cat flew across the Atlantic Ocean. The message said, "Roy, come and get this goddamn cat." The SR-71 Blackbird isn't really black. It was actually painted indigo blue with a mixture of microscopic iron ferrite balls. The tiny balls would make the radar signal and heat dissipate. Actor Joe Pesci from hit movies such as Goodfellas and My Cousin Vinny released a rap song in 1998 called Wise Guy. Seriously, look it up, it exists. Really, he stated that he had originally wanted to be a musician before his father pushed him into acting. There are only 4 musical artists or groups who have a Billboard Top 40 single from the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Michael Jackson, Madonna, U2, and Weird Al Yankovic. Comedian Jon Stewart was a walk-on soccer player during his college days at William & Mary. He even scored the only goal in the game that propelled the team to the NCAA tournament. Researchers at Trent University in Ontario, Canada, tested the DNA of the chicken that's served at Subway. They discovered that the sample of chicken they tested was only about 50% chicken. The rest was soy filler. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was closer to us in time than it was to the Stegosaurus. In fact, the Stegosaurus was already a fossil by the time the T-Rex appeared. A fossil of the Titanoboa wasn't discovered until 2009. They were the largest snakes ever, measuring 2.8 meters and weighed 1,133 kilograms. They were able to reach these monstrous sizes due to the warmer climate on Earth 58 to 60 million years ago. Today, smaller snakes can be found farther away from the equator, while the larger ones are closer to it. The US Secret Service does not allow any president to go to the top of the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri. The only president who was the exception to this rule was Dwight D. Eisenhower when he visited the monument in 1967 at 77 years old. The arch is actually closed to the public. He insisted on riding the tram to the top. Many Americans considered celery to be a popular delicacy in the early 1900s. There were many different ways to order it at restaurants, such as mashed celery, fried celery, and celery tea. Kalamazoo, Michigan was also known as the celery capital of the world. Astronomers have calculated that it takes the sun 226 million years to completely orbit around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The sun has completed this orbit only 20.4 times since it was formed 4.6 billion years ago, and the last time that it was in its current position, dinosaurs roamed the Earth. There is always a lunar eclipse 15 days before or after a solar eclipse. In 2018, a Wisconsin man had to have all of his limbs amputated after he contracted a rare blood infection from his dog's saliva. The infection severely bruised his arms and legs, which decreased his circulation. According to the Center for Disease Control, people are more at risk for contracting this bacteria when they have a weak immune system. One of the earliest house structures ever are huts found along the Dnieper River in the Ukraine, and they date back to between 23,000 BC and 12,000 BC. They were also made of mammoth bones, and large pits have been found near them that contain stone tools, bone fragments, and ash. Winston Churchill might have had a bit of a drinking problem. His daily habits were 3 to 4 weak whiskey sodas, a bottle of wine or champagne with lunch, and another with dinner, and finished off with either cognac or brandy. Robert Kennedy had 11 children with his wife Ethel before he was assassinated in 1968. They also had 35 grandchildren. The producers of the Disney film The Lion King originally wanted the musical group ABBA to write the songs, but they were not available. They ended up choosing their second favorite choice, Elton John. There's a statute in England that forbids anyone from entering the Houses of Parliament wearing a suit of armor. This has been enforced since King Edward II decreed the law in 1313. It's stated that every man shall come without force and armor. Almost 40% of Vietnamese people share the same last name. The top 14 most popular names make up 90% of the population. The most popular last name is Nguyen. For comparison, the top 14 last names in the United States only make up fewer than 6%. Ken Imhoff spent 17 years building a Lamborghini Countach in his basement. He fell in love with the car after watching the movie Cannonball Run. He eventually put the car up for sale on eBay and sold to the highest bidder in Florida for $89,000 US. It cost him $65,000 to build it. The comic character Garfield's favorite food was almost pizza because illustrator Jim Davis said that it was easier to draw than lasagna. The lovable and lazy cat's favorite dish first appeared in the comic strip in July 15, 1978, where he says it's nature's most perfect food. Jedi Master Yoda's species is still a mystery. It's never been determined in the Star Wars universe. Much of his early life is also a mystery, as it has never been stated where he was born, but simply a remote planet. The largest irrigated crop in the United States is lawn grass, according to the International Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing. Every year we give our lawns so much water that it's almost enough to fill the Chesapeake Bay. There are 15,152 living organisms, from rats to insects to people, living in the New York subway system. Something to consider: every single photo taken of you could be the one used at your obituary. There are more slaves in the world today than any other time in history, according to Andrew Forrest, founder of the Walk Free Foundation. Anywhere from 21 million to 46 million exist in the world today. Zombies are possible and may have existed in the past. These flesh-eating creatures of Haitian origin were reanimated people raised by voodoo priests called bokors. Legend has it that once reanimated, the zombies would remain under the control of the bokor and do their bidding. If that sounds too unreal, the government has a web page on the CDC website right now called the Zombie Preparedness Guide in the event of an outbreak today. The Headless Horseman originated from Irish legends. Known as the Dullahan, it's a frightening being sitting upon a horse, riding with his head held high in his hand so that he may scan his surroundings. If that wasn't creepy enough, don't worry. He also carries a whip made out of human spine. Be careful if he stops to say your name. You'll die instantly. The legend of Bloody Mary and the practice of summoning her by repeating her name in front of a mirror in a dark room with a lit candle has very real origins. It's believed to be based on Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Queen of Blood, who was convicted for murdering hundreds so that she could bathe in their blood. Every square inch of the human body has approximately 32 million bacteria on it. This means that there's an unfathomable amount of bacteria covering your entire body, every minute of every day. An estimated 6 million people in the United States, or 1 in every 50 of us, is walking around with a brain aneurysm. It just hasn't ruptured yet. In fact, a brain aneurysm ruptures every 18 minutes. That means for you, it could potentially happen any moment. The octopus is an invertebrate, meaning it does not have a backbone, and the absence of bone structure and shell gives the octopus amazing flexibility and fluidity. Spiders liquefy their prey. They don't have any teeth, which forces these predators to subsist on an entirely liquid diet. Various species of spiders have different methods of making a prey milkshake, but the result is the same. Every kind of spider has built-in venom that's specifically designed to break down cell walls. Your eyes can still move after your death, anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds. That means the eyes still look around, whether they're just twitches or there's still some synaptic activity. We don't actually know which, because generally people don't come back, but either way, it's extremely disturbing. If you sneeze hard enough, it's possible to fracture your rib, but if you try to suppress a sneeze, you might rupture a blood vessel in your head or neck. Watching TV for more than 2 hours a day can shorten your life expectancy by 1.4 years. If you watch TV for 6 hours daily, you might die 5 years earlier than you would naturally. 1 pound of peanut butter is legally allowed to contain up to 150 bug fragments and 5 rodent hairs, according to the government health regulations. A lit candle causes more than 15,000 house fires every year. In fact, accidental candle fires account for approximately 4% of all US residential fires. If you wear a ring, the number of germs living beneath it could be as high as the entire population of Europe, about 730 million. Bacteria and moisture get trapped under the ring and, combined with the warmth from your fingers, causes a breeding ground for bacteria to flourish exponentially. There is a brain-eating amoeba called the Naegleria fowleri that lives in freshwater bodies. It can kill a human in just 7 days. The death rate is 98%, and there is absolutely no effective treatment for stopping it. There is a parasite which destroys the tongue of a fish and then itself replaces the tongue for the rest of its lifespan, essentially transforming itself into a living parasitic but fully functioning and otherwise harmless tongue, and it's known as the Symatha exigua. Draculin is a protein which is found in vampire bats' saliva. This protein prevents the prey's blood from clotting while the bat is drinking it. It's composed of 411 amino acids and is named after the mythical monster Dracula. A spider's egg sac can be filled with 1,500 baby spiders. On average, the gestation period for a spider ranges from 1 week to 1 month, and there's about a dozen spiders born every minute. There very well could be one near you right now. More than 7,000 people die annually due to doctors' bad handwriting. It's a chilling statistic, and according to a July 2006 report from the National Academies of Science Institute of Medicine, preventable medication mistakes also injure more than 1.5 million Americans annually. In the 19th century, before medical professionals had the tools to discern comas or paralysis from death, the fear of being buried alive was very real. Patented safety coffins were invented so that mistakenly buried people could alert those above ground of their predicament. Before proper dentures came about in the mid-1800s, dentures were crafted using teeth taken from the mouths of deceased soldiers. King Tut's parents were recently confirmed to be siblings. DNA from the mummified remains of Tut's mother revealed her to be both mother to Tut and sister of his father. Cockroaches raised in space are quicker, stronger, faster, and tougher than their counterparts on Earth. Russian news agency Novosti has reported that baby cockroaches that have been conceived in space develop faster and become quicker, stronger, and tougher than their counterparts on Earth. There is a one-room cabin called the Devil's Toy Box in Louisiana, where people who go there supposedly lose their minds. The cabin is on Farmer Graves' Haunted Orchard in Leesville. It was built in 2014 as part of a Halloween attraction on the orchard, but after people started to be hospitalized realized as a result of going into the shack, the entire Halloween attraction had to be closed. The world's scariest haunted house is called McCamey Manor and is located in San Diego, California. It's so scary that all guests need a full mental and physical evaluation to participate. You're bound, gagged, drenched in fake blood, and terrorized for 4 to 7 hours. Nobody has ever completed it in its entirety, including a Marine and an adrenaline junkie. It has a waiting list of more than 24,000 people. Abraham Lincoln dreamt about his own death 3 nights in a row before his assassination on April 14, 1865. He shared his dreams with a small group that included his wife, Mary Todd, and his bodyguard. In 1950, the US Navy secretly released pathogens off of the shore of San Francisco for a week. The project, called Operation Sea Spray, was to determine the susceptibility of big cities to bioweapon attacks. Spider rain could happen at any moment above you. According to Rick Vetter, a retired arachnologist, spiders climb to high areas and shoot out silk in order to get back to Earth, which is called ballooning. If enough do it together, you'll be showered with hundreds of spiders. The emerald cockroach wasp reproduces by stinging a cockroach twice, the first to temporarily paralyze its victim, the second into the brain, which destroys the escape reflex. The wasp leads the zombified roach by the antenna to her burrow, where she lays her eggs in its abdomen. The Karni Mata Temple in India is known as the Temple of Rats due to the approximately 25,000 black rats that live there and are revered at the temple. There are a few white rats which are considered to be especially holy, as they are said to be the manifestation of Karni Mata and her sons. The hagfish is a jawless eel-like fish that survives off the bodies of dead or dying sea creatures. They have 2 rows of keratin-based teeth structures that they use to burrow deep into carcasses. Cotard delusion is a mental illness where the sufferer believes that they are already dead, are putrefying, or have missing body parts such as brains or internal organs. People with this disorder tend to neglect personal hygiene as well as physical health, as they consider it unnecessary. On August 7, 1994, blobs of translucent jelly fell during a rainstorm in Oakville, Washington. Theories of the origins of the blob rain range from jellyfish to fluid waste from an airplane. However, none have been proven correct. Jackie Bibby is a veteran snake handler who holds 5 Guinness World Records, including holding the most rattlesnakes in one's mouth and going head first into a sleeping bag with most rattlesnakes. He's been bitten 11 times. One bite even cost him his leg. The northern fulmar is a species of seabird that will vomit a bright orange puke on its predators. It causes the plumage of the attacker to become matted and loses its waterproof coating, as well as smells foul, similar to that of rotting fish. Loa loa, or the eye worm, is a parasite that occupies the fat layer of humans and causes diseases. The most visual sign of adult worm infections is when the worm crosses the sclera of the eye. They can survive under the skin for 10 to 15 years, causing inflammation. Ambulophobia is the fear of walking. Often linked to a traumatic event, sufferers may develop a sensation of falling when they try to stand or walk. A person with ambulophobia will usually keep things that they need close to them to avoid standing or moving. Larger cities create larger spiders. That's right, cockroaches and mice aren't the only creepy critters that you have to worry about in the big city. According to an Australian study, not only are some species of spiders more abundant in urban areas, but they also tend to grow bigger in highly populated areas with hard concrete surfaces and little vegetation. The question is, how big is your city? Xylophagia is a form of the eating disorder pica. People who suffer from this disorder will consume substances like paper, pencils, tree bark, and other wooden items. Silent Hill is based on an actual town. Centralia, Pennsylvania was once a bustling town, but when fires ignited coal mines beneath the ground, it gradually became hazardous and abandoned. The fires started on May 27, 1962, and are still burning today. When their babies get sick, Eskimo mothers will put their mouths on their baby's nose and suck the snot out. Some still do it, and there are now even devices that people can buy to suck the snot out of their baby's nose. Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise, voice in the 2017 version of It was born in 1990, the year the original It was released. Leela's Hair Museum in Missouri is the only hair museum in the world. The wreaths, bouquets, and pieces of jewelry are all made from woven strands of human hair. Museum founder Leela Kuhun began collecting hair art in 1949, and now the exhibit is home to a few thousand pieces of art. In the Asero tribe of the Eastern Highlands in Papua New Guinea, it's tradition to don costumes consisting of bamboo claws and clay masks, decorated with wild pig's teeth and tusks. The mudmen, as they are called, would cake their bodies in mud to complete the costume. Missouri couple Susan and Brian Trost sued the seller of a house from whom they had bought it when they discovered that brown recluse spiders were bleeding out of the walls in 2016. It was estimated by an expert that around 4,000 to 5,000 spiders had infested the house. The Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles allowed a woman named Lindsay Miller to wear a metal colander on her head in her driver's license photo after she said it was part of her religion. A committed Pastafarian, she belongs to the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Scientists have created Atomic, a brand of vodka made from grain grown in the Ukraine and using groundwater from just south of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Despite the tongue-in-cheek name, the vodka has passed radioactive safety tests and is safe for consumption. It's estimated that 25 million tons of spiders exist on Earth, which equates to 57 sextillion spiders. And other than Antarctica, they exist literally everywhere. They could even be on you right now.